and keep growing. So if your furnace and air conditioner are ready to be replaced, you owe it to yourself to at least schedule a free estimate and get all the details about our free furnace sale. Just to recap, when you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free, you just pay the labor. If you think you might be interested, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Hey BYU football fans, this is Mitch Harper. The Cougars are back in action this week as they host Oklahoma State under the Friday Night Lights. And to get ready for the matchup against the Cowboys, visit your local Macy's grocery store for all of your game day needs. They've got great prices on all of your favorite game day items like burger patties, made fresh dips, and more. They've also got tailgate foods that are offered through Macy's Catering, offering a wide variety of platters with smoked meats, wings, and even desserts. Catering is available to order online or in store. Getting in the Halloween mood? Macy's also has you covered with a variety of pumpkins and pumpkin-flavored treats in the bakery. Never miss a deal when you sign up for the Macy's Rewards program so you can get the weekly ads sent straight to your inbox each week.
Hi, this is BYU captain and defensive end Tyler Batty. It's football season again. Make sure to shop your local Macy's grocery stores for all your favorite tailgate foods.
Get game day ready with Macy's. Happy shopping.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Ricky Meese.
A crash on southbound I-15 near Park Lane in Farmington. It's on the right, but a tight squeeze in that vicinity due to road work, and a crash with Salt Lake City PD at the scene, wrapping it up 100 South, 1100 East. Celebrate Taco Tuesday the tasty way at Cafe Rio. Handmade tortillas bring the vibes. Slow braised meats bring the punch. And 12 tasty toppings bring the party, starting at just $2.49. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Warm today and tomorrow with highs near records for the date. Then we get a big cool down on Thursday with highs dropping into the 60s and rain likely. Right now, 75 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Our finest hours as a nation have come not when things were certain and settled, but really the most important breakthroughs and break-withs, the triumphs and transformations have always occurred within this thing we call the parentheses of a crazy idea. It was within the parentheses of a crazy idea that the foundation of this nation, conceived in liberty, it all began. Within the parentheses of a crazy idea, idea-changing, game-changing innovations like light bulbs and steam engines, automobiles and iPhones began. Within the parentheses of a crazy idea, Rosa Parks took a seat, Martin Luther King took a stand, and Jackie Robinson broke the barrier on America's long and winding road to live up to its ideals. And within the parentheses of a crazy idea, all sorts of other extraordinary things have happened, often far away from lights and cameras and coverage. 5 years ago, a group of our friends at the Dispatch entered the parentheses of a crazy idea. 5 years on, we want to take a look at what they've learned, where they are, and why there's an appetite for fact-based reporting grounded in principled values and real journalism and real intellectual honesty. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's a great pleasure to have joining us on the program today our good friend Steve Hayes, CEO and editor of the Dispatch. And Steve, it's amazing to think 5 years down the track. I remember when you all huddled together and said you're going to enter that parentheses of a crazy idea to just prove out, is it possible that in the crazy media landscape that somehow there was an appetite for some real journalism, some real intellectual honesty, some real in-depth analysis? And here we are 5 years down the path. First, congratulations, and give us the State of the Union as the State of the Dispatch.
Well, thanks, boy. I mean, you put us in very elevated company there with your intro, and we appreciate it. And we appreciate your friendship over the years, and have enjoyed coming on your show periodically and talking about all of the crazy that we've seen over the past 5 years. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been a learning experience. Jonah Goldberg and I both came out of journalism. I was a reporter. Jonah was a columnist. Neither one of us had any shred of business experience whatsoever. And, I think we've learned a lot. Business is hard. I had always had respect for people who kind of took the entrepreneurial leap and all the risks that are usually involved. And the amount of my respect for people who've done that has grown significantly because it's really hard. It's really been a challenge. But I will also say, 5 years in, probably the most rewarding thing I've done, in particular, and you alluded to this, because we built the company on sort of a set of values and principles that we thought were kind of unfortunate differentiators. And it was a risk. We had pretty strong conviction that there were a lot of people out there who might agree with us and who might be interested in the kind of journalism that we wanted to practice. But we weren't sure, and there were certainly a lot of people who suggested that we were wrong in that guess. So it's been tremendously rewarding, especially like I look at our staff of nearly 30 people, is incredible group of journalists and thoughtful business folks. Just really gratifying to be in that group and to be among people of that quality.
Yeah, and we count on those folks every single day to get for our show to get going. We start our day by looking at the morning dispatch, and then we channel our way out from there. And one of the things that I think has been such a differentiator for all of you at the Dispatch has been this whole idea of just slowing the news down, to not chasing the clickbait and the headliney stuff, but to get underneath that for a different kind of conversation. Kind of walk us through the development of that and kind of the resistance, the things you've had to resist in order to preserve that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's an important part of what we do. It's on the one hand, in the kind of, you can't even say it's a 24/7 news cycle these days. It is a minute by minute, second by second news cycle these days. And, I think we did it. We made the decision that we did to slow the news down, largely because we think that will produce better news. It's very easy to have a knee-jerk reaction to something that comes across your Twitter feed or to something that somebody says in a speech. And then you jump to a conclusion, you sort of plant your flag, and, facts might emerge that complicate that initial impression. And I think too many people, plant that flag, they make their bold claim or their bold argument, and then they're reluctant to allow other facts to enter in that might change the way that they view the situation, provide additional context. So that's what we're trying to do, is to say to people, hey, let's slow down. We're gonna wait a beat, or maybe 2 beats, or sometimes 3 days. We'll do something in the morning dispatch that's 3 days old if there are economic numbers that are confusing, rather than rush out and say, this is this big moment because of X, Y, and Z. We'll wait and we'll make additional phone calls, and we'll really try to put that into context. And I think, I think it gives people a sense that the things that we're writing are more likely to be accurate and are certainly intellectually honest. We've done the work. Yeah. And, that's the kind of news I want. And in a world where I think so many people, I hear this all the time, every speech I give, every meeting I go to, talking to people at church, and they say, I just don't know who to trust. And we would like to be the answer to that question. Yeah. And the way to be we're not perfect. We'll make mistakes for sure. But the way to be the answer to that question is to slow things down and to be a little bit more deliberative and thoughtful about it.
Yeah, one of the things that we love on this show about all of your folks, whether it's Jonah coming on, or whether it's Sarah Isker, or whether it's someone from the staff there, or a Kevin Williamson, or Charlotte Lawson, who's just brilliant. Everyone comes on and helps us do what we think is our most important job, and that is to get people to think again about what they think they know. rather than just chasing that cycle, that instant certainty that you alluded to, because it just leads us to a better conversation that actually can take us all somewhere.
It absolutely does. And I think, we're seeing, and this is certainly increasing, I would say, as we grow closer and closer to the election, to a certain extent, people are choosing the news that they want, not because they want more and better information, but because they want to be told that their pre-existing views are correct. And, we've all seen that. There is just the polarization that we see politically. I think also we've seen polarization in our media and in our information sources. And it's really not a healthy way to engage because, your side isn't always going to be right. I mean, I'm a conservative. I've been a conservative my whole life. I believe the things I believe for reasons, but I'm also open to reality. Observable reality should really matter as we make decisions about what policies we're going to pursue and how we're going to approach people who might not agree with us. And, we've done our best to prioritize that. As I say, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. We try to be charitable to people we disagree with when we, make an argument or when we challenge an opposing view. We don't always do that as well as we should, if I'm being candid about it. But we try. It's a goal. And there are other things I'm sure that we don't do as well as we'd like, but we're giving it our best shot. And I feel like we're close more often than not.
Yeah, no question about that. And give us a projection forward now. We know where we've been within the parentheses of a crazy idea. Now project us forward within those parentheses. What does the next 5 years look like?
Yeah, it's. I have to say this is sort of a mixed view for me because on the one hand, clearly if you look at sort of just the number of people who get their news and information from the Dispatch, we're very gratified, and we think that our main bet that there was an audience for the kind of work that we wanted to do, it looks like a good bet at this point. We intend to sort of do what we've been doing more and better for the next 5 years. That's the short version. I think the frustrating thing is that the information environment that we saw is so badly polluted when we launched in October of 2019 is worse today. Yeah. And I would say not just a little bit worse, but considerably worse. When you look at the kinds of, conspiracy theories that are sort of floated, maybe by some obscure Twitter user and quickly adopted by leading politicians and amplified by, people who run platforms, news outlets, people really don't know what to believe, and it's disorienting, I think, for our politics. Yeah. So I'm discouraged by that, but we're gonna, we're under no illusions that we're gonna change the world or we're gonna make that better. But we think we can do, in our little way, we can do what we can to present people with real facts and the truth.
Yeah, and having that confidence and that trust. I always say we've stress tested the nation under pandemics and world war and economic collapse. We've never stress tested it in the complete absence of trust, and you have to have that North Star. You have to know where to turn to get your bearing straight just a little bit, and that's where my day begins with the Dispatch. And Steve, to you and the entire Dispatch team, congratulations. You are part of our day. We hope everyone listening makes it part of their day, thedispatch.com. It is a place to go to get some real analysis, some honest intellectual perspective on things, and hopefully some insight that leads us to better conversations about all the things that really matter. Steve Hayes, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Boyd. Appreciate your time.
All right, that's Steve Hayes again joining us from the Dispatch, CEO and editor of the Dispatch. Their 5-year anniversary. And they started, and there were a lot of skeptics. I will tell you, they were loud. They were many, and they've proven it out. They've proven out that you can have a thoughtful, fact-based, journalistic approach grounded in real principles, and despite all the skeptics, you can have a viable approach. And the Dispatch has proven that out, that people actually want to be part of a conversation that is intellectually honest, that's in-depth, that has some meat to it. And I think they're leading out in some significant ways, and I think they'll lead out even more as we get through this election cycle and on into next. So keep your eye on the Dispatch. They have functioned within the parentheses of a crazy idea, but it is an idea whose time has come. Check it out at thedispatch.com. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. How far can this Cougar team go?
Retzloff takes the snap, gives LJ into the end zone.
Is the table set for a college playoff berth?
I love the energy and the effort. These guys have it and they believe in what they're doing, and man, it's working.
First, we need to protect Lavelle's house Friday night. It's BYU, Oklahoma State. Here's special extended pregame coverage driving home Friday at 5:30 on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
Are you really that different than the rest of us?
We are. As a fiduciary, we always focus on what's best for our clients.
What services do you offer besides investing?
We have a team of specialists in financial planning, estate planning, and more.
Your clients rely on you for all that?
Yes, we ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Okay, but you still sell commission-based products, right?
No, because we believe that's a conflict of interest. We prioritize service over sales goals.
So, then how do your fees work?
We have a simple and transparent fee that's a percentage of our clients' portfolios. So we do better when our clients do better.
Wow, we're more different than I thought.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at fisherinvestments.com.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
This is Derek Overstreet of the New Millennium Group and host of Stop Working and Start Living Radio. If you're close to or in retirement and you don't have a tax plan, call us right now, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Listen, our country's been spending like never before, and the tax bill is coming soon. If you need an income tax strategy and a financial plan that will get you through the rest of your life, give my team a call, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. If you want an investment plan that allows you to keep more of your gains and pay less taxes, give us a call, 888-999-6370. My team specializes in the type of plan that will get you retired 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible. So, get a no-cost tax analysis by calling 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. My team is standing by now.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First-degree murder charges have been filed against Jennifer Gledhill. She's accused of killing her husband, Michael Johnson, at their home in Cottonwood Heights. Second, the state of California is telling gasoline refiners to keep minimum supplies on hand to avoid sudden price increases. And third, power's been restored to 4 million customers in Florida since Hurricane Milton. Many communities, though, still without reliable water service. And right now, we're at 78 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
President Joe Biden began his administration with a commitment to distance U.S. foreign policy from the Middle East region of the world. We removed our troops from Afghanistan, stopped selling offensive weapons to Saudi Arabia. But today we're in a very different position, now committing troops to Israel in terms of the protection, in terms of the wars happening there. So we want to get underneath the headlines of all of this, look at what you really need to know and what really comes next as we look particularly at what happens next between Israel and Iran. Matthew Petty, of course, is assistant editor at Reason. Great piece at reason.com today. Biden pulls America even deeper into the Middle East. And Matthew, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back. I'm always glad to be here.
All right. So let's dig into this. It seems that we are being nudged ever closer and ever deeper into the Middle East. And kind of give us the historics of that in terms of where we've been and where we find ourselves today.
Sure. So I think historically the idea with the U.S. and Israel is that Israel is a self-sufficient ally. It's not like Saudi Arabia. It doesn't need American troops to go in directly and defend it. We just give them money and weapons, and they do the jobs themselves. But on Sunday, the Department of Defense, the Biden administration announced that it was sending about 100 American troops to Israel to operate a missile defense system And this is as Israel's talking about striking inside of Iran. So these American troops, I mean, basically, obviously, are being asked to help absorb the Iranian counterattack. And I think this is pretty historically unprecedented. And although I do also think it's been kind of months in the making.
Definitely months in the making for sure. And it's always an interesting thing. And, of course, we'll see this play out in a unique way, regardless of who wins the election in 21 days. Every candidate, every president wants to focus on domestic issues. Going to be totally focused here at home, and then the world happens, and we have all these other things going on. And so as you watch that, what do you anticipate in terms of, one, what happens over the next few weeks, and then what does that transition look like, whether that's to a Harris administration or to a former President Trump administration?
Well, I think a real risk we have here is that I mean, look, I think Israel has kind of bitten off more than it can chew, and the Israeli Iron Dome system has been getting overwhelmed. The Iranian missile strike in October, which was in response to Israel killing an Iranian general in Lebanon, that got several hits on and did heavy damage to Israeli bases. Just yesterday or the day before, the Lebanese militia Hezbollah actually launched a successful drone strike on a base deep within Israel and with dozens of casualties. So I think that is the reason why American troops are being asked to backstop Israeli air defense, because the Iron Dome is kind of getting weighed down. And I think there is a real risk to American troops. And I don't really want to think about what happens if, God forbid, something happens to the Americans during the Iranian counterattack.
Yeah, I think that's where everyone is sort of holding their breath a little bit. One of the interesting things, and you noted this in your piece today, Matthew, I wanted to get to this, and the Biden administration has clearly had a policy or a guiding principle of kind of de-escalate at any cost, almost every cost, in a lot of these things. And it seems to me that now they're suddenly in this position where the de-escalation message is not holding very well. And what is that going to do to reshape the Middle East and our alliance, particularly with Israel, and how we counter places like Iran moving into the future?
So credit is where credit is due. I think Politico magazine has done a very good job reporting on this. But basically, so Israel's been fighting these border skirmishes with this Lebanese militia, Hezbollah, for a while now. And very recently, they've, I think, gone for what can be described as a regime change campaign in the entire country of Lebanon. And according to Politico, the Biden administration was actually quietly encouraging that, I think in a way that was a little bit underhanded, because they're publicly calling for de-escalation so they don't have to eat the consequences if it goes badly. But they're also trying to see how far they can get so they can take credit if it works. And I think this is a dangerous game to play because, look, the origin of Hezbollah was something very similar, right? In 1982, Israel was being attacked by Palestinian militants in Lebanon, and so they thought the solution was to invade, install a new government to disarm the Palestinians, and part of the violent reaction to that was the emergence of Hezbollah. So I do think we are kind of running into another Iraq war situation with a serious risk of blowback.
Yeah, and give us, just real quickly, give us a sense in terms of Saudi Arabia, in terms of our alliance there, what that has been and what that's going to look like moving forward.
So historically, the U.S. alliance with Saudi Arabia has been a lot more direct military combat. I mean, we went to war for them in 1991 against Iraq. When they went into Yemen in 2015, the U.S. was very heavily holding their hand. And, the Biden administration, as we've talked about before on the show, I think did something responsible by saying we're not going to be involved in offensive Saudi operations. We're not even going to sell them the weapons. They've totally gone back on this. And I think they've been pushing, before October 7th, they were pushing very hard for an actual treaty alliance that would, commit American troops to defend Saudi Arabia. The Saudis no longer seem very interested because the Middle East is kind of going to hell in a handbasket, excuse the French, and they're, not interested in tying themselves down to a permanent alliance. But the Biden administration still seems to be chasing this.
Fascinating stuff. Anything else you're keeping your eye on in the coming weeks?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Israelis have said they're going to strike inside of Iran, and we have no idea what kind of targets they're going to go for, whether it'll be oil facilities or nuclear facilities or something. But I think it's almost certain that Iran is going to launch a counterattack. And I mean, I am really worried about what's going to happen to U.S. troops. And I also think it's a very sad thing that the reason for this war in the first place, the hostages taken by Hamas, has kind of fallen by the wayside, and we don't really hear about hostage talks or hostage rescue anymore. And I think this is partly a symptom of the Biden administration and the Israeli government getting a little bit hopped up on the idea that they're going to reshape the region, and they've got this is their final victory they're going for, rather than focusing on tackling one problem at a time.
Yeah, great perspective. I'm so glad you raised that, because it is one of those that we keep coming back to, that we have to remember that there are about 100 hostages that are still being held by Hamas, including some Americans, and each one of those lives and the lives of their family and extended family and friends have been impacted for over a year now, and we can't lose sight of that in the midst of all of this. As always, great reporting, great writing. Matthew Petty, assistant editor at Reason. You can check out his piece at reason.com. And Matthew, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, that's Matthew Petty, assistant editor at Reason. It's an important region of the world, and where it goes next is going to matter to all of us, both for the remainder of the Biden administration and whoever comes next. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unravel. And there's got to be a vision of what it looks like moving forward. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Jennifer Gledhill has been charged now with murder in the death of her husband, Matthew Johnson. Charging documents filed by the Salt Lake County District Attorney accused Gledhill of shooting and killing her husband at their home in Cottonwood Heights. His body has not yet been found. State lawmakers are talking about a possible 10% cut in state funding for Utah's public colleges. Higher Education Commissioner Jeffrey Landward acknowledges the concern that the cost of higher education has been a barrier to students.
So anything we can do to address that, whether it's finding additional funding for scholarships or finding ways to reduce the cost, we're going to pursue that.
There are projections that enrollment levels will start to decline in the next 5 years. Landward says they've directed all of Utah's colleges and universities to plan for those declines. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average now down 307 points on the day. The NASDAQ is down 216. And our KSL weather looks like we've got the last of our warm weather for the fall the next couple of days. KSL News Time, 1:31.
Many people worry they're not making the right investment choices inside their 401ks. Did you know that you might have a little-known opportunity to add some additional investment choices to your 401k and get the help and recommendations you've been looking for? This exciting feature is called a self-directed brokerage window. And the best part? The money still stays within your 401k. Learn how the trusted advisors at Capital Wealth may be able to expand your investment portfolio. To learn more, call or text the word VISIT to 801-877-9800 or go to CapitalWealth401k.com. Improving your 401k might mean the difference of retiring a few years earlier. Let's find out. Schedule your no-cost 15-minute consultation with the Capital Wealth team today. Call or text the word VISIT to 801-877-9800 or go to CapitalWealth401k.com. Advisory services offered through Capital Wealth Advisors, LLC, a state of Utah registered investment advisor.
For over 22 years, speaking on business on KSL News Radio has been a beloved tradition, celebrating our heroic business leaders and Utah consumers who have helped build one of the strongest state economies in the nation. Now, under the stewardship of the Salt Lake Chamber and hosted by Chamber President and CEO Derek Miller, the program continues to shine a spotlight on those who make Utah's business environment dynamic and thriving. With his expertise and passion, Derek brings the stories of our business community to life. As part of the Salt Lake Chamber, Speaking on Business is proud to continue its legacy of highlighting inspiring stories, trends, and special guests. Support Utah businesses now and be part of Utah's thriving economy. More information can be found at slchamber.com. That's slchamber.com.
There's a lot on the line this election. Your vote is your way to make your voice heard. Based on polling from AARP, Americans 50 and over decide elections. That means you have the power to make the candidates listen and take action on what matters to you. Things like protecting the Social Security you've worked hard for and making sure family caregivers get the support they need. But you have to cast your vote to have your say. That's why AARP Utah has created an election guide with the most up-to-date information about when, where, and how to vote. You can find out about all the key voting deadlines, changes to polling places, and how to cast your ballot. Make sure the candidates hear from you. Get trusted, up-to-date election information at aarp.org/UT-votes. That's aarp.org/UT-votes. Paid for by AARP.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Ricky Meese.
We've had a crash in Murray State Street, about 5800 South, and a KSL traffic trooper reporting traffic lights out blinking at the intersection of 4500 South and 9th East. Teens can get up to $200 with a Teen Learn and Earn account, plus continue earning rewards as they master the essentials of finance. More at cypresscu.com/teen. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
It'll be warm today and tomorrow with highs near records for the date. Then we get a big cool down on Thursday with highs dropping into the 60s and rain likely. Right now we're at 79 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The American education system is facing a crisis of unprecedented proportions, with the lingering effects of pandemic-era school closures exacerbating some of the really long-standing, troubling issues in education around the country. And despite the gravity of the situation, presidential candidates have largely neglected to address anything, really, regarding K-12 education in their campaigns, and that should have a lot of us really wondering, what is it going to take to really revitalize America's schools and secure a brighter future for the next generation? A great piece in the New York Times today. Jessica Groves, opinion writer for the New York Times, covers family, religion, education, and culture. And Jessica joins us on the line. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great in-depth piece in terms of where we are as a country. Give us just kind of a baseline in terms of what you see as the highest priorities, and then we'll talk about what we're not talking about and maybe some things we should be talking about.
So we're still really wounded from the school closures of 2020 to 2021. Test scores are down. Chronic absenteeism is still a huge problem that I think is under discussed. And the funding, the big burst of billions of dollars of funding that came from the federal government expired in September. And so schools really haven't caught up. And it's my concern that society has just sort of written off the kids who had the misfortune of being in public schools from the year 2020 to 2022, roughly, and that includes my kids. So I'm very affected deeply by it, and I think it's a problem that is going to continue to affect society as this group of children moves through the school system.
Yeah, no question about it. And as we look at all of those different factors, I'm glad you mentioned the kind of the chronic absenteeism. And you also raised in your piece in the Times that there's also a lot of teachers that are missing a lot more school. And, of course, then you get into the shortages of substitutes and what that does to education and learning. Kind of walk us through some of the other things that might be impacting where we are. And then I want to start this brainstorming in terms of how do we look at this different?
So in terms of the teacher crisis, there is a problem with the pipeline. Fewer college students say that they want to be teachers. So the number of potential new teachers has been declining. I wrote a piece last year about how the number of college students saying they want to be teachers is at a 50-year low. So at some point, we are not going to have enough teachers to teach the children who are present. So that's sort of a longer-term issue that, again, started before the pandemic, but was really exacerbated by the stressors of the pandemic. And then sort of part of that is there is somewhat of a teacher absentee crisis along with the student absentee crisis. And the reasons for that aren't quite as clear, but when there's no one showing up to teach the class and there aren't substitutes to be there, to qualified substitutes to support those students, they're really not going to be learning that much day to day.
Yeah. You also pointed out in your piece that while the goals should always be not just to get those kids back to grade level, we got to get them above that. But in a lot of cases, we're just lowering the bar. And you talked about the importance of data in all of this, that if we're giving out more good grades, but we really don't have the proficiency or the skills, we're just kind of, that's just kind of magic thinking in terms of the change. So how do we get that better data, and how do we make that fly across the country?
So the term is called the honesty gap. And what the honesty gap means is that there is a gap between test scores that are usually administered by either the state or federally and the grades that students are receiving. So a kid can be getting A's and B's, and then the state test comes back and it shows that they're below grade level. And that's not giving parents a good sense of where their children are. And so there are states, Virginia is kind of the best example, that are really trying to work to close that honesty gap, because we can't fix what the children's deficits are if we don't know what they are.
Yeah.
And so, I am very sympathetic to parents' concerns that the kids are over-tested, that teachers are just teaching to the tests. But I think that there's a fairly acceptable and, collective idea of what, for example, a third grader should know by the end of the school year. And, there's various different theories about how it is best to gear those standardized tests, but you need the standardized test because otherwise the grades are not necessarily telling you what you need to know about your child's progress.
Yeah, it is impossible to chart a course to where you want to go if you don't know where you actually are. It's the old red dot on the map at the mall where it says you are here. If we don't know where we are, we simply cannot chart a course where we need to get. And in nowhere is that more true than in education. Give us one last thing before I let you go, Jessica, in terms of I also loved how you concluded your piece in terms of we've got to get a sense of urgency around this. As you said, it's become one of those things we kind of shrug our shoulders and point fingers and place blame, but then we just kind of move on. How do we create that kind of urgency that will lead to the kind of transformation that we clearly need, especially for those kids that were impacted in that 2020 to 2022 frame?
So, I mean, in the piece, the big argument is I wish that both candidates for president would talk about it. Media attention to something does help more people be aware of what's going on because, again, I think the statistic was something like 80 to 90% of parents think their kids are at grade level when far, far fewer kids actually are. So I think just raising awareness of the scope of the problem from our elected officials. But then I would like to see more states being like Virginia, where they are being specific about what their state's particular problems are, because as we know, education in this country is very local. There's a lot of local control over it. And so each state has to figure out, okay, what are our top 3 problems and how are we going to address it? It's still going to be an uphill battle because those kids lost a lot of time and a lot of instruction, and it was a very difficult moment for our country, but we need to actually try.
Yeah, great perspective. Jessica Gross, opinion writer for the New York Times. You can check out her piece at thenewyorktimes.com. And Jessica, thanks so much for joining us today. This is really, really well done. Something for everyone to think about. Every state has some things to get working on, and that's where it's got to begin. But it really begins by all of us being interested, engaged, and having that sense of urgency that we've got to get this done. Jessica, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Jessica Gross, opinion writer for the New York Times. And we got to get to the data. We have to know where we are if we want to chart a course to where we want to go, especially when it comes to K through 12 education. I think we're doing some good things here in the state of Utah. I think there's more work to be done. And the only way we get it done is to start the conversation of how we're going to do that. We'll be right back.
Celebrate Taco Tuesday the tasty way at Cafe Rio. Handmade tortillas bring the vibes. Slow braised meats bring the punch. And 12 tasty toppings bring the party. Starting at just $2.49.
We all want a stress-less holiday season. With Soda Weight Loss, you can stress a whole lot less. With state-of-the-art weight loss, you won't have to stress about fitting into your holiday outfit. You won't have to stress about how you look in the family photo. You won't have to hide behind anyone. You'll stress a lot less about your emotional eating. You know, with my Soda dietitian and coach, it took all the stress out of losing weight for me. And they'll do it for you, too. I lost 37 pounds in 90 days, and stress-free, I've kept it off for 3 years. I am 3 years down the road. So stress less about all those potentially dangerous fat loss drugs, stress less about pills and injections, stress less about crazy, sometimes dangerous side effects. So if you want to stress less for the holidays, get involved and get going with Soda Weight Loss. As I always say, your Soda weight loss journey, there's no time to lose, only time to win. So stress less and start winning before we get to the holidays. And you can do that by checking it out at Soda Weight Loss, state-of-the-art weight loss, SOTAweightloss.com.
You trust us for news and information in your car. Now trust us at home. KSL News Radio has you covered, keeping you informed on the latest breaking news, weather, traffic, sports, and more. Listen on your Amazon Echo or Google Home device. Just say, Alexa, open KSL News Radio. Or listen on the KSL News Radio Listen app. Text the word app to 57500. KSL News Radio. We have you covered.
Have you ever heard of the 5 Ps? That's right, the 5 Ps. These can be applied to most every area of your life, but it's especially true for you and your money. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and many years ago when I was a young man in the Marine Corps, I learned about the 5 Ps. Proper planning prevents poor performance. Now, you can't control what's happening with the stock market, but you can control how you plan for it. Trajan Wealth and our fiduciary advisors have been helping our clients with the 5 Ps for years. We have hearts of teachers and will never complicate by using financial jargon. Our fee structure is transparent. The more you make, the more we make. The majority of our clients come from other financial advisors. Isn't it time for a second opinion to allow Trajan Wealth to help you with the 5 Ps too? Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600 or visit TrajanWealth.com.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
You do countless things without a second thought to protect your family and home. Every time you're in the car, you buckle your seatbelt. Before the next load of laundry, you remove the dryer lint. When you head out, you always lock your doors. And one simple task, done far less often, can protect your family and home this winter. Schedule a furnace inspection by a certified heating contractor to check for safety and efficiency. A friendly reminder from Enbridge Gas.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Let me ask you a question. You have a best friend?
How big would it shock you if somebody told you that your best friend just killed somebody?
911, what's your emergency? Someone on the other line said they kidnapped my son, and they're demanding $500,000.
On September 12th, 1995, 12-year-old McKay Everett disappeared from his home in Conroe, Texas. It was a crime that shocked the community because the suspect was so unlikely, so unexpected.
Former high-ranking police official, he'd run for sheriff at one point.
Law enforcement personnel were pretty much split down the middle over whether or not he actually did this.
And to this day, McKay's mother, Paulette, still feels that justice was never truly served.
I've asked myself so many times, what in the world happened?
Ransom is available now. Listen at ransompodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Question: what will you find on all over-the-counter or OTC medicine packages to help you choose the right drug and use it safely? The answer: the drug facts label. This label lists the medicine's active ingredients and purpose, how much to take, and warnings you should know before using it. Remember, even OTC medicines you buy without a prescription can cause side effects you don't want. So follow the information listed on the drug facts label. For more information, visit fda.gov/drug facts label. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the wife of a missing Utah National Guardsman has now been charged with his murder. Second, communities in Florida hit by Hurricane Milton are seeing their power restored much more quickly than water systems can be repaired. And third, Utah's public colleges and universities are being told to plan for a decline in enrollment and reduced state funding. 79 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and as we often say on this show, words have meaning and the meaning matter. And sometimes those words come in moments where they really matter. What you say matters. The power of language can help shape the course of events and change human history. And today we want to dig into one of those great events and some great words, the fall of the Berlin Wall and the subsequent end of the Soviet Union. An extraordinary piece in Deseret magazine. Ethan Bauer, who writes features, profiles, and explanatory pieces as a staff writer for Deseret magazine, has one entitled The Voices That Cracked Stone. And Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Boyd. Glad to be here.
This is a brilliant piece. I was in and stuck.
Wow. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It was brilliantly written, and it is beautiful narrative and just important history. And so I want to kind of go back through this as we talk about it. Of course, many people know the phrase from Mr. Reagan, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. But you got into the story behind all of that. And just give us a little sense as you started going down this path as a writer. Describe that journey for us.
Yeah, so that's really, like you talked about in your intro, what we really wanted to capture in this story was the power of words, both from Ronald Reagan and then from the other main source in the story, who was a teenager at the time in East Germany. But as far as Reagan went, once we started digging into the speech and everything behind it and the famous 6 words, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, we knew we really had something interesting. It really starts with back in 1987, Reagan was going to Europe, mainly through Italy for an economic summit, and stopped in West Germany on his way back to the United States. And so most of his speechwriters were very focused on this summit, and so the duties for the stop in West Berlin fell to a guy who was very young, very inexperienced at the time, 29-year-old Peter Robinson. And so he got to join the president's advance team visiting Berlin before this speech. They were there to look at security measures, set up where the lectern would be and so forth. And Robinson, again, 29 years old, had never been to Berlin, wanted to see for himself. And so standing there where the president was going to speak, looking out at the other side of into East Germany, was so struck by what he called the almost literal oppression. You could almost feel it between the two sides. But his thinking for the speech really crystallized later that night at a gathering where he decided to ask some of the West Berliners there what they thought of the wall. And they basically told him that one person in particular pointed and said something to the effect of, I have a brother who lives 300 yards that way, and I haven't seen him in 20 years. How do you think I feel about the wall? And pretty much everyone in that room had a similar story. And so Robinson really felt like that was the story that needed to be told. That was what needed to be said. He got a lot of pushback from the national security apparatus, the State Department, because they didn't want to aggravate tensions with the Soviets at that time. But he really insisted, and his sort of saving grace was that the president himself had seen an early draft of the speech and really gravitated toward the part about tearing down the wall. A lot of other people had heard him say that that's really, what he wanted to say. And so whenever Robinson and his team got pushback, that was sort of what they used to defend themselves. If you don't like that part, you can take it up with President Reagan himself. And sure enough, Reagan eventually got pressured pretty heavily to drop that part of the speech, but he stood by it, and, the result was probably the most famous 6 words of the 20th century.
Yeah, no question. And I love how you got into that whole process. It's one of those things I always just cringe at. Doing anything by committee is rarely good, and in nowhere is that worse than creating a speech. We've seen that in State of the Union speeches, inaugural speeches, where it feels like it was created by a committee with all the different segments. And you had one line in here from Robinson, again, a young 29-year-old. And to me, this was everything, that Robinson had these strong opinions, but I love the way you framed it, that he understood that language had power and that sanitizing that power was cowardly. To me, that's an extraordinary statement, and I don't know if there's a truer statement in any of it than those words, that so often we soften things, we water it down, we do it by committee, and sanitizing that power really is cowardly.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one thing he's talked about a lot. His sort of basic point there was that the only way these other sort of forces in national security and the State Department wanted him to say something like that was in such a way where it basically made clear right away that, he wasn't serious about it. It would completely take away the power of what he was calling for. That was the only way this, as you said, approach by committee sort of wanted him to frame this idea. And Robinson really pushed for being direct about it. If we're going to say this, if he's going to say this, let's have him say it and let's have him really mean it. And Reagan himself was, really in line with Robinson's thinking on that.
Yeah, and let's flip to the other side of the wall in all of this, because I love the way you wove these narratives together of what was happening with the speech writing and what was going to be the words that Reagan would deliver. And as you mentioned at the outset, this teenager on the eastern side of that wall. And give us just a quick snapshot of her experience.
Yeah, so her name was Bridget Schlick. She lived in East Germany about, I believe, 60 kilometers or so south of Berlin. She grew up never knowing a world really without the Berlin Wall. And, she would go to Berlin fairly regularly. Her family took her there both to visit some of the museums and also to find a lot of the grocery items that weren't available in East Germany. And so she never necessarily felt like her family was doing without, like they were very, poor or anything, but she always did get the sense that something was just a little bit off. And it really started to crystallize the older she got. She had a lot of pen pals from around the world and really learned about even West Germany or, the United States, Japan, Norway, places all over, and started to sort of realize how different things were there, especially when her friends from those places would invite her to visit. And, she had to turn them down because she wasn't allowed to leave East Germany. So as she got older, she and her father really started sort of a letter writing campaign to different government officials at the local level, at the national level, or even to the Soviet leaders, trying to fight for different rights. She was very big on religious freedom as a Christian, a very outspoken Christian. She wrote a lot of letters about that. She wrote a lot of letters about sort of trying to continue her education, even though she didn't really buy into a lot of the sort of communist youth programs that were required to further education at the time. She ended up getting arrested for her activism, and she shortly after Reagan's speech, actually, And she spent quite a while in a German women's prison until the end of the Berlin Wall. She actually learned about the fall of the wall, I believe, the day after it happened. So she didn't even really get to celebrate it necessarily like a lot of people did. But in so many ways, right, she was very different from Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, the most powerful man in the world at that time. This was, relatively speaking, powerless teenager who took it upon herself, nevertheless, to express herself and paid a pretty severe price for it.
Yeah.
But, they sort of shared this belief, and what wove the piece together, what sort of braided it together, was that both Reagan and Bridget really believed that the power of words could make a difference and change things for the better.
No doubt about it. It is a brilliant piece. I encourage you all to go check it out. You can check it out online at Deseret.com, part of Deseret Magazine. Ethan Bauer, brilliant writing, great thinking, incredible storytelling in all of this, and it is the power of words. The words have meaning, and the meaning matters, and that's just as true today as it was when Reagan uttered his famous words at the Berlin Wall. Ethan, thanks so much for joining us today. Great stuff.
Thank you, Boyd. Appreciate it.
All right, that's Ethan Bauer from Deseret Magazine, and it is a fantastic piece. It's a brilliant story. You should check that one out. And remember, language has power, and sanitizing that power is cowardly. We need boldness in the world today. That wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for top of the hour news. Don't miss hour number 2. It's straight ahead. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. The wife accused of shooting and killing her husband in Cottonwood Heights is now being charged with first-degree murder. Utah National Guard member Matthew Johnson reported missing last month before his wife, Jennifer Gledhill, allegedly told a confidential informant that she had killed him. She's also charged with multiple counts of obstruction of justice. Johnson's body has not yet been found. The Uinta School District says they learned a lot after a school shooting threat. They say the real-life situation was a great training moment. Here's KSL News Radio's Verl Johansson.
All schools in the Uinta School District went into lockdown in September after a Uinta middle school student came to the office showing a text message that threatened someone would shoot up the school. Superintendent Rick Woodford told KSL.com they got lucky they could find the person who sent the threat quickly because it was almost time for school to get out.
Woodford says he'd like to figure out if there's a way to speed up the process for tracing phone numbers. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. More than 5 million Americans have voted already in states where early voting has begun. That pace actually down from 4 years ago when COVID drove record early voting. While we don't know exactly who voted for whom yet, we do know that it's more likely Democrats are voting early than Republicans. Republicans, though, have actually picked up the pace from 4 years ago. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day, now 324 points. The NASDAQ is down 187. And KSL weather. Say goodbye to the warm weather in October. It's about to turn cool. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
Ever drive a semi before?
I've never even driven before.
Well, step here to go, stomp on that pedal to stop.
It's hard to do something if you don't know what you're doing.
What's the stick for?
Just wiggle it now and then to shift gears.
A Learn and Earn account from Cyprus Credit Union gives teens the resources to practice money management and develop the confidence they'll need when it's time to step out on their own. See how your teen can earn up to $200 with a Learn and Earn account at cypruscu.com. Federally insured by NCUA.
Honk if you need anything.
My name is Brian King, and I'm running to be your governor because Utah is headed in the wrong direction, and we can do so much better. If you're frustrated by politics today, if you feel like politicians aren't listening to you, if you're looking for something different, for a leader who prioritizes common sense and bipartisanship, you have a place with us in this campaign. Join us and vote for Brian King for governor by November 5th. For the better.
Paid for by Brian for Utah.
Don't you deserve health care you can count on?
Well, you can count on United Healthcare. With Medicare plans that fit your life today and as your needs change tomorrow, you can enjoy reliable coverage and low out-of-pocket costs with a Medicare Advantage plan from United Healthcare. United Healthcare Medicare Advantage plans. Made for Utah, trusted everywhere. The Medicare annual enrollment period ends December 7th, so go to uhc.com/Medicare today.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. So at Consumer Cellular, we're lowering the price for those 50 and up. Now you can get unlimited talk, text, and data for $30 a line when you buy two. That's just $60 a month for 2 unlimited lines. So if you're 50 and up, make the switch and save. Come on, you've earned this. Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com today. Requires 2 lines of service, age validation, and credit approval, subject to system and area limits, taxes, and other fees apply.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Ricky Macy.
Freeway traffic in the valley in good shape. No accidents, no delays. But we do have slowdown southbound Mountain View corridor from just before 3100 south down to 3500 south in West Valley City. Celebrate Taco Tuesday the tasty way at Cafe Rio. Handmade tortillas bring the vibes. Slow braised meats bring the punch. And 12 tasty toppings bring the party. Starting at just $2.49. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
It'll be warm today and tomorrow with highs near records for the date. Then we get a big cool down on Thursday with highs dropping into the 60s and rain likely. And right now we're at 79 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bonas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The Biden administration recently put sanctions on the Hilltop Youth, a group of extremist Israeli settlers in the West Bank. It marks a shift in U.S. policy towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And while the measures aim to address the escalating violence and occupation in the region, they raise some critical questions about the timing, the effectiveness of these kinds of sanctions and these kinds of actions. And so as we look at the situation in the West Bank, as it continues to deteriorate, really threatening the viability of any possible path towards a two-state solution, it's time to think again about what we think we know in terms of the West Bank, the Middle East, and where the war in the Middle East will be won or lost. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's time to think again about what we think we know, and often when we go to this region, we turn to Nahal Tusi, of course, Politico's senior foreign affairs correspondent, and a great piece talking about where this war will be won or lost in Politico. You can find that at politico.com today. And Nahal, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So let's dig into this. The sanctions, first of all, on this group called the Hilltop Youth, a group of Israeli settlers. Give us a little backstory in terms of that, and what is it that the administration is trying to do with these sanctions, and is this a needle mover?
Yeah, so the Hilltop Youth are a group of extremist, violent Israeli settlers who basically want to annex the whole West Bank into Israel, and they are known for attacking Palestinians, trying to stop humanitarian aid from going into Gaza, and a number of other things that have really alarmed the United States. And the sanctions, it's the latest in a series of sanctions that the U.S. has imposed on violent Israeli settlers. over the past almost a year, every couple of months, they unveil a few sanctions on like a few people or a couple of groups or something. But it's really, it was unprecedented in the sense that the U.S. had really never done anything about going after violent settlers until this past year, until after the war began. But the question is, why didn't they do it sooner? Because they could have done it years ago. And it might have changed the political dynamics today, but they didn't.
Yeah, you mentioned in your piece that on one hand, it shows that there is a little bit of balance there in terms of the American involvement from both sides of the equation. But as you said, it seems to be a day late and a dollar short in terms of real impact there. So what is the next step look like, or what is it that you're watching for as we continue to see this play out?
Look, I think the question is, is a Palestinian state even possible anymore? And it doesn't look like it's possible in Gaza. And it's, the East Jerusalem was annexed by Israel a long time ago, although most of the world doesn't recognize that. And then you have the West Bank, which is kind of where the Palestinian Authority has some governance ability, but where increasingly there are Israeli settlements being built and Palestinians being kicked off their land and pushed out of their villages with really no place to go. So the question is, do you actually believe in creation of a Palestinian state? Right now, given what happened on October 7th of last year, the horrific Hamas attacks, most Israelis don't want a Palestinian state. And so the idea that they would, take it easy on Palestinians of the West Bank is just not realistic. But if the U.S. wants to lead, and if it genuinely believes that long-term peace in the Middle East involves having a Palestinian state, then it will need to step up its game to try to protect the last vestige of a Palestinian state in the West Bank. And frankly, these sanctions are pretty limited, pretty spaced out, pretty incremental. And even though I'm told by American officials that there's going to be more of them, that they're going to, quote, widen the aperture of what they're doing, the people on the ground are adjusting. They're shifting their bank accounts. They're doing things that make it less impactful.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the plan is, but it does not seem like the U.S. is really leading. It's just late.
Yeah, definitely late, and not a lot of vision there. And one of the things you pointed out in your piece that really struck me was this whole idea of hope, that hope of achieving statehood, and if the Palestinian people lose that hope, then the region really is going to remain unstable, and it will really be a place for all of that grievance to build up, and that always spills out in the form of terrorists or attacks.
No, that's true. I mean, you just, you nailed it. There's just going to be a lot of really unhappy, increasingly angry, hopeless young Palestinians who just don't see a political future, freedom. Increasingly, they're living under Israeli occupation. And they just, that's not a recipe for peace and stability in the long run for the region. And they're going to make their plight makes other Muslims mad around the world. And it just feeds extremism. It's just not been resolved. And, the situation does not look good. And the thing about the Biden administration is back in 2021, when they first took office, there were people inside the administration that said, we have to do something about these violent settlers. We should be imposing sanctions. We should be doing these things. But they didn't do it for a variety of reasons, including, they didn't want to destabilize the Israeli government. They didn't want to pick a fight. They always had a reason not to do it, including, frankly, just bureaucratic malaise and slowness and lack of prioritization. And if they had done it, it could have really sent a signal to Israel's extremists, some of whom are now government ministers. And if the U.S. had done this, maybe Israeli voters wouldn't have put these people in government. And now that they're in government, they're making it harder for everything from getting humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza to, wanting to expand settlements. So it's just been this whole thing where you look at when you look at the past and you say, what were the missed opportunities? Where could there have been a different fork in the road? That is one of them back in 2021. I don't know. I don't think that it would have prevented October 7th, but we might have been dealing with a very different political dynamic in Israel right now. Maybe the government there would be more willing to listen to the United States.
Yeah.
But we're not.
Yeah, and I think you pointed this out so powerfully, Nahal, that the fact that the administration has really kind of been in this, de-escalate, and do things slowly and kind of at the margins, thinking that's the better way to do it. And yet, as you've pointed out, it's actually made it worse because we're moving too slow. We're just tinkering at the edges and not really getting to the root issues. And at the same time, we're undermining our credibility and I think confidence on all sides that we can actually be helpful in terms of getting to a real resolution.
Right, and the impact is so much less now than it could have been 3 years ago, because Israelis are traumatized by what happened on October 7th. They're so traumatized. It's horrific, and the idea that they would allow a Palestinian state is incomprehensible to most Israelis right now. And so the settlements, they have more support now. The settlers have more free reign. The government's afraid to stand up to them, and it's partly because of this trauma. And it's just this vicious cycle that's just built on itself. And I don't know, man. How do these things end?
Yeah.
You tell me.
Well, I think it's going to take some bold leadership across the board on all sides.
Leadership. Oh, that's so interesting. Have you seen any of that anywhere lately around the world?
No, that's the problem.
There's a total deficit of leadership. I
look
around and I'm like, where are the leaders?
Yeah. It's so funny. We've had this conversation on so many different fronts, and whether it's dealing with the Middle East or even just funding things. When a company says, "Oh, we have a funding problem," or a higher education says we have a funding problem, I'm like, "No, you have a leadership problem." All the other stuff is just extra, and it is going to take some leadership. And Nahal, we're going to look to you to help us find them and then put them to work. So,
yeah, that might be like a quest for the Holy Grail or something.
Well, we'll do it together. We'll link arms and we'll do it together. Nahal Tusi, Politico senior foreign affairs correspondent, brilliant thinker, and a fantastic writer. And Nahal, we always appreciate you bringing us some great perspective and some terrific writing. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Take care.
All right, that's Nahal Tusi, best of the best. And I always appreciate her perspective. And this is it is a leadership problem. Bottom line, it's leadership on all sides of the equation, including the United States, including Israel, including the Palestinians, that in the absence of leadership, we continue to have these conversations at the margins, which do nothing except for embolden the radical elements on all sides and prevent us from getting to the real conversation. We're so far away from a two-state solution where we'd been close in some different seasons, and now we seem very, very far away. And it's one of those that if we do continue to water things down, that we do things to de-escalate, that we avoid the bold leadership moments, what we end up with is bigger problems down the road. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. It's gonna be 80 forever. Fall is finally here. Listen this week as we track our first bout of chilly weather. Get a reliable KSL forecast every 10 minutes on the 9s, mornings and afternoons on KSL News Radio.
With interest rates coming back down, I bet the real estate market will pick back up in 2024. We're already seeing that, Tim.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter how the market is doing when you have the right team. So if you're looking to sell your house now, you want to downsize or you need more space, you need the Stern team.
The Stern team has taught us, I can think of a handful of things that I would worry about if I was buying or selling, but there are 100 details that are involved in selling a home, and they have lots of people that are handling every detail so nothing falls through the cracks.
And they have so many different options. I mean, I worked with Cammie there at the Stern team, and she was awesome. But if you need an instant cash offer, you can do that. If you need to buy before you sell, you can do that. They have flexible fees.
They also have people that they represent that are looking to buy a home, so maybe they can make that perfect connection within the Stern team.
So don't put off selling your house or buying a house because you think the market isn't just right. The market is right with the Stern team.
Go online to sternteam.com or just Google the Stern team.
I'm Brian Tedesco, CEO of Blaupunk Americas, the pioneers of the car stereo. Today, we're not just about sound systems. We are revolutionizing the e-bike scene with Blue Dot Bike. Thanks to AmericanEagle.com, our online presence now features a dynamic e-commerce website that showcases the quality and affordability of our foldable e-bikes. And our collegiate e-bikes, just perfect for the college fanatic. These e-bikes offer a new way to experience freedom on two wheels, no matter your age. When we needed a top-notch website to match our cutting-edge e-bikes, we turned to AmericanEagle.com. They made the impossible seem easy, tackling digital challenges like pros. Check out the Blue Dot Bike website to see AmericanEagle.com's amazing work in action. Need the best in website and digital marketing solutions? AmericanEagle.com is your go-to. They've been a game changer for us, and they can be for you too. Visit AmericanEagle.com or call 877-WEB-NOW-1. That's 877-WEB-NOW-1.
In a world where ugly siding, leaky gutters, and inefficient windows are sapping homeowners of their will to live, one company must save us all. This year, join RGS Exteriors as it embarks on a mission to eliminate outdated home exteriors, one Utah home at a time. Every plank of old, ugly siding must be replaced. Every leaky gutter must be eradicated. Every inefficient, energy-sapping window must be vanquished once and for all. Begin your epic remodeling quest by calling RGS Exteriors for a free estimate. Discover how a heroic team of experts will save your siding, gutters, or windows for a fair, no-nonsense price. Call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or journey online to rgsexteriors.com. RGS Exteriors, coming soon to a home near you.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, what are you waiting for? Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for about 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop texts, stopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, murder charges have been filed against Jennifer Gledhill. She's accused of killing her husband, Matthew Johnson, at their home in Cottonwood Heights. Second, the Uinta School District was able to trace the source of a threat very quickly, and they say it's important to do that. And third, early voting underway in many states. An estimated 5 million Americans have already voted. 79 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
The economic stability of Putin's war in Ukraine is a critical factor in Russia's success. However, renowned economists have suggested that the key mark, 2025, could really mark the end of this devastating conflict due to Russia's dwindling economic resources. So we want to dig into this, get beyond the headlines a little bit in terms of what is the relationship between the economic power and the military might, as well as the potential consequences for Vladimir Putin's regime and Russia as a whole. Alex Motil is a professor of political science at Rutgers University, Newark, and has a great piece in The Hill today. A Russian economic meltdown is coming next year. And Alex, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So let's dig into this. You, along with some other experts, are saying, hey, 2025 could be a really interesting shift in terms of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And so kind of give us the lay of the land. What is the present reality? And then we'll look at the projection forward.
Well, the bottom line is that the Russian offensive, its war against Ukraine, has effectively stalled. What that means is that the Ukrainians are effectively winning. You know, if a much weaker power is able to prevent a much stronger power from prevailing, we would normally call that a victory. Not a resounding victory, but a victory nonetheless. So Putin is stuck. He needs to do something quickly in order to save the situation and maintain his legitimacy and popularity at home. But the Ukrainians are fighting back. And the progress he's making, and it's very incremental, although it is taking place, costs the Russians over 1,000 men dead and wounded on a daily basis. This is fundamentally unsustainable.
And so as you look at that, it's stunning what Ukraine has been able to do to kind of hold the line there. But as you point out in your piece, that you've got to have this economic wherewithal to keep all of that armaments, to keep all those supplies moving. That's a really heavy lift. And so kind of walk us through, where is the Russian economy? What is it that's causing it to collapse there? And what do you anticipate that collapse kind of looks like as they move into 2025?
Well, remember, I mean, the bottom line is that you can only wage a war and you can only expand in some kind of imperialist fashion if you've got the economic resources to do so. As I say in the article, if you are a tiny power economically, you simply can't sustain a major war. You shouldn't be having pretensions of becoming a superpower. And that's where Putin's Russia currently stands. What he's done in terms of the economy is essentially eviscerated it to the point where, in many respects, it's become a vassal economy of China. But consider the following. When just a few years ago, when he introduced mobilization, close to 1 million highly trained young professionals fled the country because they didn't want to serve in the army. Effectively, again, point number two, close to 650,000 Russians have been killed or wounded in the war. These are phenomenal numbers. These aren't necessarily highly professional individuals, but nevertheless, they are important to the economy. The Russian economy is suffering from an extremely severe labor shortage. That, too, is ultimately non-sustainable. Sooner or later, the place will start crumbling unless you can find people to man factories, plants, and places like that. At the same time, he's had to ramp up military expenditures very significantly. Next year's budget will be, I believe, military expenditures will be in the 15 to 20% range, which is simply incredible considering the weakness and the size of the Russian economy. Unsurprisingly, under these sorts of conditions, there is a shortage of materials. The inflation is running, it's been estimated at close to 22%. Officially, it's merely 9%, but unofficially, it's close to 22%, maybe even higher. And he's spending money that he doesn't have. And the only way he can get money is either to print it, which is likely to cause hyperinflation, or to raise taxes on small and medium-sized business, which is likely to lead to a continued economic downturn. So in 2025 could be a perfect economic storm for Putin, whereby all of these negative factors come together. Add to that the likelihood that the Ukrainians are still going to be retaining a hold over a substantial part of their country and imposing very high losses on the Russian military. And it's perfectly conceivable that in 2025, Putin will essentially face a choice, either end the war or face possible revolt, face a possible economic meltdown. And that would mean that significant numbers of Russians would probably take to the streets. Desertions would probably increase. One can imagine all sorts of catastrophic scenarios.
Yeah, and as you look at that kind of in combination, as you said, that perfect storm, you've had the brain drain of top talent, you've got the workforce shortages, you've got all of the economic pressures, Russia's current share in terms of where they fit in terms of global GDP. And so they're sort of in this space where if things don't shift and if this economic death spiral keeps happening, it is either a retreat or a rebellion, or is there some combination of alliance with China or Iran or others that might buy Vladimir Putin a little more time? What does that scenario look like?
Well, I mean, militarily, the Chinese have been very skittish. I mean, they've provided some technological assistance. The North Koreans have provided military assistance, but that too can only go so far since they're effectively in a state of war with South Korea. The Chinese are in no position to provide extensive economic aid since their own economy is in serious trouble. And Iran, of course, is concerned with Hezbollah, with Israel, Palestine, and the rest. So basically, Putin, Russia, is more or less on its own. And he'll have to figure out how to weather this perfect storm. And at least based on these three economists that I cite in the piece, that's going to be well nigh impossible. So we should be the moral of the story for America, for the United States and the West more generally, is hold off on any kind of negotiations for the time being. Wait until Putin's back is literally against the wall, and then he may be more amenable to some kind of fair deal, one that would preserve his realm, but also guarantee Ukrainian sovereignty and independence.
Yeah. Fantastic perspective. Alexander Motul was a professor of political science at Rutgers University, Newark, and professor, fantastic piece, really wonderful insight. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Again, that's Alex Motul, a professor of political science at Rutgers University, Newark, and really interesting. This is why we have always said that making sure that Ukraine has not just enough to hold the line, there are opportunities to actually advance the line. And as Professor Motul said, if you get Vladimir Putin really up against the wall, if these economic pressures really are creating a perfect storm, that might be a very different negotiation process in terms of getting to the peace and helping Ukraine maintain their sovereignty as a country. And so this is the time to not retreat, to not just look for the easy exit ramp. This is another area where I think some U.S. leadership is going to be required because Vladimir Putin is on the ropes, and economically he's about to be crushed. And that changes the game in many different ways. We'll go ahead and step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next here on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Ballots are being sent out today across Utah. They'll start arriving as soon as tomorrow. Now, if you're voting by mail, that needs to be postmarked by Monday, November 4th, or you can put them in drop-off boxes. Businesses along Bangerter Highway say they're taking a financial hit due to major construction closures. Ariana Castellano manages the Papa Murphy's at 47th South in Bangerter, where east-west traffic was closed this summer.
Where we usually sell like up to 200 pizzas, we are now selling like 100, 110. It's been really tough to keep up.
Another business owner at Bangerter on 134th South tells KSL TV their sales have already taken a 15% hit since a year-long closure went into effect this past weekend. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Former President Trump told a business audience in Chicago today that tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. He defended his economic policies in a Q&A session. Trump was asked if he's spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin since leaving office. He denied that recently, but said if he had, it would have been a smart thing. Your money at this moment. The Dow Jones average closing trading today down 324 points. The NASDAQ was down 187. The S&P 500 was down 44 points. And our KSL weather looks like we're going to go off the edge of a cliff into fall here in a day or two. That's next. KSL News Time 2:31.
I finally decided a few months ago that enough was enough with the high electrical bills in the summer and the high heating bills in the winter, and it was time to replace our builder-grade windows of our 20-year-old home with the latest and greatest windows from Advanced Window Products. Ever since Jake and Nate showed me a demonstration of what a difference the right kind of window can have on my home's energy use, I couldn't get it off my mind. So my wife and I decided it was time, and man, am I glad we did. From the moment Ken showed up to give us a free in-home estimate, we've had such an outstanding experience through the entire process. Within an hour, we had financing set up, and then about 8 weeks later, the crew showed up and did what we thought was going to be a 2-day installation in a single day. Now our home is more comfortable. Our electrical bills have started to drop. We qualified for energy tax credits to help pay for the windows. And we even took advantage of their expertise and replaced our sliding glass deck door with one that has a pet door built in. Look, I know you don't make a decision like this on a whim. You do your research. So do that. But make sure you call Advanced Window Products at 801-850-9100, and you can get a special deal of $3,000 off 10 windows or more if you mention Andy when you make the appointment. 801-850-9100 or go to advancedwindows.com.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my superhydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
Every day, Cintas service reps help businesses get ready for the workday. They provide freshly laundered workwear delivered every week. Mats, mops, restroom and cleaning supplies. First aid and safety products to help your employees stay safe. They even test and inspect fire extinguishers and emergency lights. Cintas helps keep your business running smoothly. See what Cintas can do for you. Visit Cintas.com.
Oh, I'm ready!
And get ready for the workday.
For over 22 years, speaking on business on KSL News Radio has been a beloved tradition, celebrating our heroic business leaders and Utah consumers who have helped build one of the strongest state economies in the nation. Now, under the stewardship of the Salt Lake Chamber and hosted by Chamber President and CEO Derek Miller, the program continues to shine a spotlight on those who make Utah's business environment dynamic and thriving. With his expertise and passion, Derek brings the stories of our business community to life. As part of the Salt Lake Chamber, Speaking on Business is proud to continue its legacy of highlighting inspiring stories, trends, and special guests. Support Utah businesses now and be part of Utah's thriving economy. More information can be found at slchamber.com. That's slchamber.com.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. And here's Ricky Meese.
We already have a little bit of heavy and slow traffic setting in southbound I-15 between 7200 South and 114th South, and an accident in Davis County northbound Hillfield Road at about 1400 West. Get to know winter fun at the Utah Snowmobile Show at Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy. Tickets at snowwest.com/Utah. The Utah Snowmobile Show, October 18th and 19th at Mountain America Expo Center. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
It'll be warm today and tomorrow, highs near records for the date, but then we get the big cool down on Thursday with highs dropping into the 60s and rain likely. And right now, we're at 81 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson.
On Utah's home for elevated conversation.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, as much as we do through charity work, through government programs to help alleviate the weight of economic poverty for the American people, there's more to the story of poverty in America than just economics. And we've hit it many times on this show. Social capital, community, opportunity for social mobility, upward mobility is vitally important to address. And it's trickier for government to know how best to address it because it takes more than simply throwing money at the problem. It actually takes all of us. Kevin Corinth is a senior fellow and deputy director of the Center on Opportunity and Social Mobility, was part of a great perspective piece at Deseret.com. Talking about the need for us to face up to our social poverty problem. And Kevin, welcome to the show.
It's great to be on.
All right, let's dive into this. This is we often say that it's not just that connection to capital and money. It's that connection to people and systems and civil society. that is so important. But give us a little bit of a breakdown. You looked at it from the context of what we're throwing money at in terms of helping people economically, but why we've got to look at that from a social poverty problem as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting. If you look at sort of the American dream, it seems like things are going pretty well if you look at material well-being. So poverty rates have fallen, incomes have risen really across the board. But what I think is ailing a lot of Americans is more this idea of social well-being or social capital. Are you strongly connected with a family? Do you have a church that you go to? Do you trust your community and civic institutions? And all those kinds of measures, we've seen a real decline. And I think the reason we don't focus on this sort of social poverty problem is we just don't have a great way to measure it. When it comes to economic poverty, it's pretty easy to ask people how much money they make each year and how much money they get from different sources. But it's a lot harder to ask about some of those social well-being questions. And so some of the work that I've been doing with my co-authors at the American Enterprise Institute is to create this sort of new data on social well-being that takes into account connections across all these kinds of domains of social life and ask how well people are doing.
Yeah, and let's unpack that, because I think it's so fascinating to look at all of this. And what is it that you have been finding in your research in terms of that interconnectedness, again, through the community, family, religious involvement, social trust, all of those things? Give us some of the things that you've uncovered.
Sure. And so something that we already knew is that sort of social poverty has gotten worse. What we didn't know until some of the work we're doing is exactly those connections. What are the factors among individuals that lead them to have more social well-being? So one of the things that jumps out at you is income, actually. So people with higher income tend to have higher sort of social capital, but only up to a point. So up to about $85,000 of income, sort of your social well-being and social capital is improving. But once you get to that $85,000 income level, it really levels off. Another sort of related thing is if you look at education. So those with a college degree have much higher levels of social capital on average than those with just like a high school diploma or less. That's not to say that everyone with just a high school degree or less has lower social capital. There's actually a lot of sort of variation within each group. But so those are some of the factors that really jump out. I should say when it comes to income, it kind of matters what the source of income is. While it's true that as income goes up, you have more social capital, that's only the case for sort of earned incomes that you get from your job or other market sources. Actually, when it comes to government transfers, you actually see sort of the opposite relationship. That is, government transfers go up from things like food stamps or cash welfare or other kind of government assistance programs, which can be very vital for those who are suffering from material poverty. It looks like when you get more of that income, that actually social well-being is not going up. So that's sort of an important policy lesson, which, if we want to address not just our material poverty problem, but our social poverty problem as well, it can't be just about transferring more dollars.
Yeah, I thought that was such an interesting component to your piece, is that if someone is getting, over half of their money, their economic capital is coming from government or from those sources, as opposed to earned income that they're out working for from a job, that social connectedness is still in that poverty range. I think that's a really interesting correlation there, and really plays out the fact that you just can't throw money at a lot of these problems. That's not the way to actually help us build a society that really has both that interconnectedness, but also has that path to upward mobility.
Right. Yeah. And I'm someone who, believes in a social safety net. I think we need something for those who have fallen on hard times to get them back. But some of those programs have in them some of these pernicious effects on some of these really important building blocks for a more prosperous life. So marriage and strong families is one of the most important determinants of not only staying out of material poverty, but also for social poverty as well. But some of these government programs that we have, which are very well-intentioned and needed, and certainly in some form, they can really penalize individuals from getting married. So if you're sort of a single parent, scraping by on a minimum wage job, working really hard to raise your kids, that's really important work. But it turns out that some of our programs, like the Earned Income Tax Credit and some of our other welfare programs, I think inadvertently discourage. They can really, if you get married, you lose a lot of those benefits, and that sets up really big risks for some of our more vulnerable individuals with kids. And so we want to make sure that we're providing that assistance, but also making sure that we're not inadvertently penalizing and making it really risky and hard to take those steps, like getting married or getting moving up the career ladder in order to become more self-sufficient and have those strong social bonds, which we know are important for overall well-being.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you raised that, because so many of the programs that, again, needed and necessary, but often we end up giving people exactly what they need to stay exactly where they are, and there's no real glide path. I remember having a conversation with someone who was all excited. They were talking to their social worker because they had just gotten a raise at their job, and the social worker said, you can't take it because you'll lose your housing and you'll lose your custody of your kids and all that, because there's no glide path out of those, and you really become trapped in that. And as you said, rightly so, that it creates these adverse risk elements that sort of trap people both in economic poverty, but also in that social poverty.
Yeah, exactly. And it really applies, especially those programs where it's sort of like you get it or you don't. So health insurance is another one too, like Medicaid, where, you really need, if you have kids, right, like you need health insurance for your kids. And if there's just some worry that you're going to lose that, I think that's really important. So it's not an easy problem to address. You want to target these forms of aid to those with the lowest incomes. But there are ways to mitigate at least some of these marriage penalties and just big risks and welfare cliffs if we're smart about it. And one of the big things we need to do is just consider all the programs all together. There may not be if you take one program in isolation, there might be only a relatively small sort of work disincentive or marriage disincentive built into that. But when you take the whole pie, all the safety net all together, there are some really bad consequences of the way it's designed, such that you really can discourage marriage and other ways to sort of rely on your broader family and community safety net that we really want to make sure we're preserving and strengthening.
Yeah. Just in our last minute, give us one more thing that we ought to be thinking about or thinking differently about when it comes to social capital and that interconnectedness of community and really solving that social poverty problem.
Yeah, I would say we just need to be a little bit modest about what we don't know. I think there's some things we know we can do in terms of fixing some of these marriage penalties that we talked about. But it's really not going to be enough, and government policy is not going to be enough. It really does take all of us in our own communities, in our community organizations and churches, and our own families and broader relative networks and friend networks that we're really working to lift one another up so that everyone can prosper and become not only economically better off, which is great, but really socially better off.
Great perspective. Kevin Corinth, Senior Fellow, Deputy Director of the Center on Opportunity and Social Mobility. Great piece at Deseret. You can check it out at Deseret.com. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Right, thank you.
All right, fantastic perspective there. It's not enough to solve the economic poverty problem. We've got to get the social poverty problem as well. And just throwing money at it won't fix it. It's going to take all of us to actually do it. We'll step aside for one last break. Some final thoughts on Inside Sources coming up next.
Transform your old, outdated kitchen with half-price granite. For a limited time, half-price granite is offering special pricing starting at $25 per square foot installed. That's lower than most big box stores. These prices are some of the lowest around. Granite, quartz, marble, and quartzite, all starting at $25 per square foot installed. Call 801-486-1700 or visit halfpricegranite.com. Half-price granite, affordable luxury.
The movie shows at Minky Couture in Layton this Friday from 10 to 1. Check out all the ways to stay cozy and warm during the cold months. MinkyCouture.com.
Life can feel hard or overwhelming sometimes, but you don't have to face things alone. Getting help for yourself or someone you're worried about starts with a call or text to 988, where you always have someone to talk to, someone to help you, and somewhere safe to go. 988 Utah is here for anyone experiencing mental health challenges or emotional distress. 988 Utah can even help you navigate how to support your struggling loved ones. Whether you're struggling with anxiety, depression, or suicidal thoughts, trained professionals are ready to listen and provide free, confidential support 24/7. Utah, don't hesitate to call or text 988 for you or someone you care about. The caring staff at 988 Utah can connect you to the right resources. Learn more at 988.utah.gov.
Celebrate Taco Tuesday the tasty way at Cafe Rio. Handmade tortillas bring the vibes. Slow braised meats bring the punch. And 12 tasty toppings bring the party. Starting at just $2.49.
With Progressive, you get more than savings. You get access to us through our mobile app, online chat, or by phone.
Oh, I see what you're doing here, Jamie. Giving me all these ways to stay in touch so I have no excuse not to. Well, you're in luck, because this guy's in the market for a new BFF.
Actually, all our customers can contact us this way.
Oh. Yeah, no, I was just kidding.
But I am always up for Taco Pizza! Jigsaw!
Get help from Progressive through the website, app, chat, or phone. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Did you know your skin is the largest organ of your body? Huh? That's why you should shower with Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash instead of plain old bar soap. Love your skin by super hydrating it with vitamin B3 and glorious notes of vanilla and shea. Did you know that my super hydrated skin is the second largest organ of my body? The first is my heart. Old Spice. Men have skin too. Old Spice Super Hydration Body Wash. 24/7 renewing moisture. With daily use.
When I decided to lose weight with Soda Weight Loss, it wasn't just so I could get back into size 6. Although, I shouldn't minimize the thrill of that after 30 years.
Yeah, you might as well mention it.
It's thrilling. But the reason I did is because I got so frustrated. I couldn't figure out how to do it myself. I kept trying to eat healthy, and I thought I was eating healthy. And I still couldn't walk around the block without getting